Hey guys, Eddie here. Football season's on us, so I wanted to do a quick video on choosing games, betting games, and how to basically win at betting, any type of betting. Um, I think what I want the guts of this video to get across is that how you bet is more important than who you bet. I'm a big fan of the Kelly Criterion. Some of you may know it, others may not, but it's worth looking into. It's definitely the kind of like the end all when it comes to how to structure a bet, how to place a bet. And we're going to go over some of the basic math. It's really simple. It's not complicated at all. First thing I want to do before we dive into football is basically give some props to the guy who is definitely the best football pick guy that I know. I've been getting his picks for years. Yeah, I think his best year that I had with him was like 60% wins, so astronomical. And then I think most years I think he's about 55%, but he can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not getting paid to do this. The stats is a friend of a friend type of thing. Never even met the guy, but he definitely is worth it. So if you are looking for solid picks, I won't be giving you solid picks, but I'll definitely delve into the math behind Kelly Criterion and eventually how to build like your own winning book. But if you're just looking for expert picks, solid picks, this is the guy to go to. And I think out of all of the historical um, data that I have on stats is his first week always is phenomenal. I remember many years ago, I think it was 2012 or 13. I was living in San Francisco and I had never been to Reno. I had passed through a couple times, and Stats had just given his picks, and I hopped in the car, drove to Reno through the snowy Sierra Nevada mountains, and got to Reno. Placed a ton of football picks that he had provided and some parlays, and ended up I think he had like a perfect weekend or perfect he had a perfect weekend that weekend. I think he went 10 for 10. I mean, it was just crazy. So yeah, check him out. This is his Twitter handle, and then this is his webpage. His packages are pricey, but I think it's quickly recouped, especially if you implement the Kelly criterion that I talked about. Now what's funny is, I used to go back and forth with Stats discussing the Kelly Criterion, and I don't think he was a big fan of Kelly Criterion and he's a big math guy, but better at math than I am. But we always kind of had some disagreement on the Kelly Criterion, which is fine because it's your money. You choose to wager how much you want. I think Stats, and again he can clarify if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think his wagering technique is a little more conservative than Kelly Criterion. So in any regards, let's get started. So one of the first things I like to do is go look at the line that's being offered. So let's grab a line, and typically Vegas odds I think has it up. I'm just gonna do a quick Google search here for NFL odds week 1. And looks like Forbes has some data, but we'll go to Sportsline. They're usually pretty good. Okay, great. So
April 18th is National Piñata Day.
First game of the week is tomorrow night. It's Green Bay at Chicago. So what I usually like to do is go into either Excel or Sheets, Google Sheets, and just kind of map out some of the basic data. So I'm going to pop into Google Sheets here. We'll create a new sheet. Call this one NFL Week 1, 2019. And let's just map out the game. So we've got the team. So Green Bay is playing Chicago. So we'll say team, Green Bay at Chicago. And then we've got some of the lines. So, and it's giving us a bunch of different lines. So we'll just take the most favorable ones. Now I know up on nitrogen sports, these odds are actually much better. So it would probably behoove you to go on to nitrogensports.eu and make your wagers there. But we'll use these just for simplicity's sake. All right, so it's saying Chicago -3 is 117. So we'll just put in the spread, -3. Oops, -3 on Chicago. Doesn't always necessarily mean +3, but typically that's the way it is with 99% of the time. That's the way it is with the spread. And for those of you who don't know what spread betting is, that's where the books are trying to make the game even. So the consensus is that Chicago will win this game on average. If they played it an infinite number of times, they'll win it by 3 points typically. And what another interesting video will be about is how they come to that line. It's actually pretty interesting. It's very old school, but it works. I know there's a lot of models and quants involved now, but the old school method is very reliable, and prediction markets are kind of tied in heavily with the way they used to do it. So, but we'll do that in another video. All right, so the odds are -120. So that means for every $120 you wager on Chicago, you will win $100. So we'll put those odds in here. So we'll put in the odds, -120. Most typical football bets you'll see, it's the spread, and then it's typically -110, which is roughly 91 cents on the dollar. And we're going to break the odds down further just to make the math simpler, or easier for me, just because I'm used to looking at the odds in not decimal format, but like American standard odds format. All right, so we'll do -117 and -117 since it's not giving us the other side of the coin on the odds. And we'll just assume that's what the odds are. So one of the first things I like to do is break down what those 117 odds translate into. And the way we can figure that out is basically just do, -100 divided by those odds, and that will give us how much we're getting on the dollar. So we're getting about a little over 85 cents on the dollar per bet here. Now the opposite side of this, the Green Bay bet, is probably not -117. It's probably like -105, -102, somewhere closer to there. Typically, this 117 spread is high. I'm not sure why the odds are laid out this way. Maybe let's find another site where the odds are maybe laid out a little bit better. Vegas Insider might give us a better layout. Yeah, I like the way that Nitrogen Sports lays out the odds, but we'll live with this. And I'm assuming that -10 means -110. So we're just gonna keep it standard and make it a -110 on both. I'm so used to using nitrogen that I'm just spoiled with the way the odds are typically laid out. Okay, so these aren't decimal format, but I think this is American odds. Could be wrong, or fractional odds, maybe it is. I'm not sure what the proper terminology is, but basically, I just like to know how much I'm getting on my dollar. So for every buck I wager, what am I getting? So for every buck I wager on either of these teams, I'm getting about 91 cents on the dollar. So now the next thing I like to do is, and I've done this in prior videos, is, normalize the odds. So basically just see what the book estimates the win percentages for each of these teams at the spread. Now, because the odds are the same, we know that it's 50-50, but we'll just go through the math just because it'll come in later. So basically, to get the normalized odds, we first have to get the VIG-based odds. So this is good because it will show the casino VIG, the take, and you can see the sum of that is like 104.76, so close to 5% is the casino VIG. Okay, and then we're gonna standardize this, and then that's just basically this divided by the sum of column 8. And as I said, right, it's 50%. We know that because the odds are the same. So now this is where Stats really hits home, because when you get emails from Stats, he's very good about not only giving you picks, but also giving you what he believes is the percentage chance that that particular pick is going to win. And so in this instance, I would normally rely upon Stats. I haven't gotten his picks this year, but I'm just this is more for educational purposes on how to structure a bet, and the reliance more on the wager than on the pick, which, they both have to go hand in hand. But I think if you become accurate and you keep historical accuracy on your picks, and you can determine whether or not, based on that empirical data, whether or not you're accurate with your picks, then you can decide on building a model to bet on. And then, if you are profitable, which not many people are, you can exploit that. So in this particular instance, I like Chicago in this game. They're playing at home. They looked halfway decent last year. Aaron Rodgers usually starts cold. He's usually the media is getting on his back for the first couple of months, and then by Thanksgiving he typically turns it around. Clay Matthews is not playing anymore. And again, I'm not a football analyst, so take what I say with a grain of salt as far as picks go, but try to follow the logic of the structuring of the bet. So let's say, so I like Chicago. And let's say I believe Chicago has a 55% chance of winning. So, I think if you ran a simulation over the, course of infinity, you play these games an infinite number of times, I think Chicago is going to win this game 55% of the time by more than 3 points. So my winning guess is about 55%, which would make my losing guess at 45%. Okay, so now here's where we start to get into the important math, which is how to calculate our return on investment, and then ultimately how to calculate how much we bet, which is the most important factor in making a wager. So we're going to put a column here for ROI. Now, ROI is very simple to calculate. It's just your chance of winning, which here is 55%, times your odds, which is 91 cents on the dollar, minus your chance of losing, 45%. So my ROI on this bet, if it's fully dependent on me being accurate with my estimation of the win percentage. But if I'm accurate, then my ROI is 5%. Now think about that. Think about how profound that is. If I could get a 5% return on investment in every sporting event, and I was actually accurate in my picks, I mean, that's huge. You could bet 100 grand, and over time you're going to make 5 grand on that 100 grand. So again, it's hugely dependent on your accuracy. Now, Stats, highly accurate. Me, not accurate. I typically rely on Stats for that data for the picks. But again, the secondhand part of this, which is super critical, is how much to wager. And we'll get into the math as to why the wagers are often more important than the picks. So that's my return on investment. Now, so you got a 5% investment. The next question you have to ask yourself is, if you are accurate and you have a chance at making a 5% return on investment, how do you grow your capital in the fastest, most profitable manner possible, knowing that you have a 5% advantage, a 5% return on investment? Well, John Kelly of AT&T Labs back in the 50s figured this whole thing out. We'll Google it, but I think the general gist of the story is that John was Bell Labs. Yeah, Bell Labs. John, there he is. Let's find the one with the in his formula. There we go. Yeah, so Kelly Criterion. So I believe the story goes, and I haven't checked it in a while, but from what I understand is that John Kelly had developed a throughput formula for phone switches. And it turned out that throughput formula, which I guess for the phone switches it was applicable to everything. They applied it to something with fires, with noise cancellation. So it turns out, I guess, his methodology, his formula is applicable everywhere. And when you're talking specifically about the growth of funds in an advantaged situation, this is the quickest way to grow your funds. It requires a lot of guts, as you'll see, just based on some scenarios. But it is, at the end of a scenario, if you use Kelly Criterion, you'll see your funds grow in the biggest fashion possible. There's no other formula that you can apply that will make your funds grow quicker than Kelly. And again, it's highly dependent on you being accurate with your picks, which stats is. So the Kelly Criterion formula basically tells you how much to wager of your capital. So now you have to keep in mind with wagering capital that there are limits. I've been to Vegas, and even not making huge bets, just bets in the thousands of dollars. The book has had to call like the front office or the back office and ask if I was allowed to make that bet. And it's not because I'm a shark or anything like that, or a sharp or anything like that. It's just because right, maybe the book is imbalanced, or they don't want to take action on the game, or they maybe think someone has an inside track, or that I'm betting on behalf of somebody else. So you're limited by, the growth is limited by the people that are willing, the counterparty risk, the person that's willing to take your bet. So in the case of Kelly Criterion, it's great to look at, when you run the stats numbers through Kelly Criterion. I mean, pretty much every season, if you started with like $1,000, you would end with millions. But again, you need the stomach to make the big bets, stomach to lose those big bets, which happens. And more importantly, you need someone who's going to take on that counterparty risk, either via the web, let's say some website you bet through, you hit big, you hit for $100,000. There's a chance they might not pay you. They might send you your Bitcoin. I've had nothing but great experiences with Nitrogen and Bovada. I haven't been burned on any of the sites, but Nitrogen's my go-to site for those who care. So just keep that in mind before you start thinking about all the wealth you're going to accumulate through betting. It's difficult just from a counterparty standpoint. Although I have seen in Vegas, people make bets in the hundreds of thousands, and they won't even blink an eye, especially routine customers. I remember I was in Vegas when it was the Jets were playing the Patriots, and I think it was like Jets were getting like 9.5, and the guy in front of me, and stats had given me Patriots, and the guy in front of me wagered $100,000 on the Jets. Oh, you know what? I think that was, and I'm not sure if I'm right about the odds, but I think that was the game where Sanchez ran into the butt of his snapper. I think that was the game. So you guys can correct me on the the line and the date and all that stuff. But all right, so to get down to the Kelly Criterion, the way that you calculate the Kelly Criterion is basically you just take your return on investment and you divide it by your odds. And that's it. So as you can see here, we should be wagering roughly 5.5% of our capital on this event. And again, that's dependent on me being accurate with 55% chance of winning on Chicago. So that 5.5% wager, so if I started the season with $1,000, this will be a $55 bet, obviously. Straighten this out because I'm going to share the workbook. And what's great about this is, again, if I'm accurate, we could build a simulator right in here, either using JavaScript or just doing a line by line, and just do a random number generator and calculate whether or not 55% or above hits, then or 55% and below, which means Chicago won versus Green Bay, and we could run a simulation, and you would see that your capital would grow quickest using the Kelly Criterion. There is no other way to grow your capital quicker than using Kelly Criterion. Now, where Kelly Criterion gets scary is, and I've seen this with stats. Stats, again, will give you the chance of winning at a particular event when he sends the picks. And I've seen instances where there's like 79% chance of winning. So as you can see, in that event, and I've seen that lose too, his top picks for some reason are not as accurate as his second, third, and fourth picks. He's, at least in the data that I've accumulated on him, his sweeter spot are his second, third, and fourth picks as opposed to his top pick. And he can probably speak as to why that is, but or maybe I just don't have enough data. But in this instance, right, where I'd get a 79% chance of winning, if stats tells me, hey, Chicago's got a 79% chance of winning, first of all, I believe him. I believe in his data. He's got the proof. He's got the years behind him to prove it. But look at this. If you wanted to grow your capital in the quickest fashion, you'd have to wager now close to 56% of your money. Now, the first bet of the season, that's not too bad because you feel good. You're like, all right, I'm betting close to $600 on Chicago, and it's a good way to start the season off, especially if you win, because you'll get 90 cents on the dollar, so you'll get close to $500 on that. When it starts to really hurt is when stats has done really well for you, and let's say he's grown your stash from 1,000 to 5,000. Now you've got to walk to the counter and give up more than half of your profits to grow your money and not waste this opportunity, which is ultimately what it comes down to. It's finding the absolute right size to grow your capital. Now, a couple other things to be said about Kelly. You never want to overbet the Kelly Criterion. You never, ever, ever want to go over, because that's when you really seriously start to hurt your chances of growing your capital, and you actually dig into your capital growth steeper than you would if you were to underbet it. And so there are variations on Kelly. There's the half Kelly, the quarter Kelly. So I recommend what I would typically do, and what I typically do is when I wager is the way I did the normalization with the odds. I normalize my bets across all the bets I'm going to make in the day, and then I round down. So if I was going to wager $27.95, I would just make it a $2,000 bet, just to be a little bit on the conservative side, just for error. But it still gives me a substantial. It's still 40% wager of my total capital. So still a worthwhile bet. All right, guys, so that's it. I just really wanted to dig deep into the Kelly Criterion, and I know there's tons of naysayers out there, so I expect to hear from them. But there's also tons of people who agree. For the naysayers, the only off the cuff, kind of blanket answer I would say is that, again, really the only thing that detracts from Kelly Criterion being effective is if your win percentage is inaccurate. And, I'm not claiming to be accurate, but I am claiming that stats is accurate. So go check out stats again. This guy has definitely treated me right in the past. Nice guy and super smart, but he delivers his information in a easily digestible way. So you know exactly who you want to bet and why, and he gives you a lot of data, but not an overwhelming amount. All right, thanks, guys.